Like, write, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook. If you like to make a movie request on this channel, do so in the comment section below. And feel free to check out my other shows, Modern Classics, TV Treasures, and Geek Reviews. And check out my editorials. Hello, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache. And today's review is Meet the Deedles. Just look at this VHS cover. Does this thing look like it's going to be good by any stretch of the imagination? And oh yeah, get a load of this quote on the front of the cover. The most unlikely comedic duo since Bill and Ted. Wow, Disney. Way to go to show that you ain't got no shame. But the shamelessness doesn't end there, because on the back of the box we have, in the wild comic spirit of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Wayne's World. Yeah, again. Way to go to show that you ain't got no shame, Disney, by mentioning who you're ripping off on both the front of the box and the back of the box. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll drop a bomb on that bridge when I get to it. Let's get this review over with. This is Meet the Deedles. Twin surfers are sent by their old man to a summer camp near Yellowstone Park. And it turns out that the summer camp is closed. On the way back, they end up getting sidetracked and confused for rangers at Yellowstone Park. And just what is their first assignment as rookie rangers? Well, to rid the park of, get this, prairie dogs. Of course. Well, what do I think? Well, this movie is awful. It's stupid, it's predictable, and it is annoying. Meet the Deedles was a collaboration between both Disney and Deke Entertainment. The latter being best known for creating cartoons like Inspector Gadget, the 90s Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, and providing the English dub for Sailor Moon. Their collaboration led to two films, the live-action Inspector Gadget movie starring Matthew Broderick, and this film. It's nice to know that this collaboration not only led to one of the worst comedies I've ever seen, but also led to one of the worst live-action cartoon adaptations. This film was so bad that it bombed. It bombed hard, losing $4.4 million against a $24 million budget. And not only that, but it also has landed a 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. And DVD copies of the film have gone out of print. The film for the longest time was only available on eBay on VHS. And keep in mind, We live in a world where crappy comedies like Disaster Movie get a DVD release. The film was eventually released in August of 2020 on Amazon Prime and Disney Plus. The film was directed by Steve Boyum, who also was a stunt performer on films like Blues Brothers, Apocalypse Now, and The Predator. Meet the Deedles was his only theatrical released film, later directing made-for-TV movies like My Mom Got a Date with a Vampire and Johnny Tsunami. This film rips off other comedies such as Dumb and Dumber, Wayne's World, and Bill and Ted, and Caddyshack. Hell, half the plot of this movie is basically a rip-off of Bill Murray's subplot from Caddyshack, where he's chasing the gopher. And boy, do I mean rip off. Because saying that this movie was inspired by those movies is like saying your dog was inspired to take a crap on your neighbor's lawn after watching the fart scene from Caddyshack. And that could be kind of forgiving if this movie was made in the late 80s or early 90s. But no, this movie was made in 1998. Not only that, but this movie's idea of humor is making pop culture references. And they make them blatantly. And I mean blatantly. They pass a moose and Phil Deedles says, "There's Bullwinkle." And then he makes a reference to Pepe Le Pew. And then he makes a reference to Bambi. And then there's a point where an elephant passes by. And then he makes a reference to Dumbo. And then when they're in the car, they make a reference to Yogi Bear. Because they're in Yellowstone Park. They make a reference to Deadly Do-Right. Get it? Because they're wearing uniforms? And then they make references that only teenagers and adults will get. Like towards the end of the movie, they make a Baywatch reference. And somehow it's a better Baywatch movie than the actual Baywatch movie. And then they make references to the Three Stooges. Like there's a scene, rips a page off of a book, goes near the watering fountain and squirts himself with water, all the while making a curly sound effect. And when they're not making pop culture references, they're making cheap jokes. Like there's a scene where Phil Deedle and a girl, Lady in the Trampet, with an earthworm.
I think I just threw up in my mouth.
When they're not making blatant pop culture references and doing cheap gags, they're basically making dated references that only a grandma will get. Get a load of this.
Hello, it's Ed and Dick. You may be a winner.
No one in the target audience is gonna get that joke. Hell, I'm a grown-ass adult, and even I didn't get that joke. Someone had to point it out to me. And that brings me to another problem with this movie. One of the biggest problems with this movie is that it straight up does not know what kind of tone it wants to take. Like, you have scenes in where Phil Deedle's pants catch on fire, and then you have his brother rapping in a bear suit. You also have toilet humor jokes, and where a prairie dog is tied to a gas bomb that immediately makes people want to go to the bathroom. And the prairie dog just keeps running with the gas bomb, causing some ducks to breathe in the gas, and then they crap all over his desk. You also have a scene where Stu Deedle pulls Phil Deedle's finger, causing him to fart. So is this supposed to be a kid's movie? But then you have scenes in where you have characters acting horny, like Phil Deedle looking at a girl's ass. And then you have scenes in where Phil Deedle is getting really hot and heavy in the hot springs. So is this supposed to be like a raunchy comedy? This movie also has some of the worst green screen effects you will ever see. In fact, this whole movie is riddled with bad green screen effects. They also use the same backgrounds multiple times. I mean, I've seen nostalgia critic sketches that have better green screen effects than this movie. Anyhow, we get a scene in where we see a truant officer on a wet bike chasing after them. And he chases them until they land back in the water. You know, I'm not usually one to wish death on a character, but wouldn't it be funny if he ran over them with the wet bike? Then the movie probably would have been over. But sadly, the movie continues, and let's talk about the characters. The characters are either stupid, bland, unlikable, or abnormal. First, let's talk about the worst character in the movie, Phil Deedle, played by Paul Walker of Fast and Furious fame. He is one of the most annoying characters I have ever seen in a movie. He talks like a combination of Jess Vicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Link Carr's 90s kid. Always using 90s surfer slang like bodacious, gnarly, tubular. Because if there's anything people oh so loved about the 90s, it was the extreme vocabulary. Not only is he annoying, but he is really freaking stupid. He's so stupid, he makes Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies look like a super genius. And then there's his brother, Stu Deedle, and he's not that bad. In fact, he's one of the few characters that I actually liked. He's actually a really smart cookie. He's only stupid when he's around his brother. And then we have our female lead for the movie, Jessie. And she is about as bland as shredded wheat. And the fact that she also has no romantic chemistry with Phil Deedle also really downgrades the movie. And their romance is really weird. Like, he's supposed to be 18, and she looks like she's in her mid-20s. Next up, we have her father, Captain Douglas, who is nothing more than your stereotypical hothead who's always getting angry and yelling at our main protagonist. He's also abnormal. Like, there's a scene where he's drowning and the Deedles are trying to save him, and he's like, "Get off of me, don't save me." Then they save him, and he's still angry. And then in the very next scene, he's rewarding them by giving them badges. Next up, we have the nurse, who is really hilarious. She is one of the very few things about this movie that's actually funny. I wish she was given more scenes. And speaking of very few enjoyable things about the movie, we have our villains next up. First up, we have the redneck sidekick named Nemo, played by Robert Englund, who is also Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street films. And then we have our main villain, Frank Slater, played by Dennis Hopper, who is also in the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie. Both Dennis Hopper and Robert Englund are the only ones who are actually having fun with this movie. They are the unintentional heart of the movie. And they actually got good laughs out of me, even though their plans as villains makes no freaking sense.
Monkey.
And speaking of that, let's talk about the villain's plan in this movie, because boy is it ever stupid. Towards the end of the movie, we have the Deedles who are captured by Dennis Hopper and his goons, and Dennis Hopper starts monologuing. He starts monologuing as if we, the audience, are a bunch of idiots, where we find out his plan. It turns out he was the one who was responsible for bringing all the prairie dogs. He has them dig tunnels from Yellowstone to his property. His master plan is to bring Old Faithful's water over to his land. And with the water, he plans to make his own park called Slaterstone, which is going to be bigger and better than Yellowstone. That'll teach Old Faithful.
Everybody got that?
You know, Dennis Hopper's character, King Koopa, from the Super Mario Brothers movie 1993. His plan was to take a chunk of a meteorite to combine both the human world and the dinosaur world together. And somehow that plan is somehow more realistic than the plan that these villains have. You know what? Let's just get to the final verdict. This movie is an annoying experience from beginning to end. Its characters are either tolerable, bland, or just annoying. The plot is cliched even for the time it came out. The humor and jokes, if you could even call them jokes, are mostly just juvenile. The only enjoyable aspect about this movie is Dennis Hopper and Robert Englund. But other than that, this movie, like I said, is an annoying experience. Telling you to avoid it is a public service announcement. I give this movie 1 star. I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off. And if you excuse me, I got a telephone call to make to an old YouTube buddy. Hello, Jacob. It's me, Henry.
Hey, Henry, how you doing?
I got a bad 90s movie for you to review.
Bad 90s movie?
Is a 90s comedy worse than Biodome?
A movie worse than Biodome? It can't be. What is it?
Meet the Deedles. I'm sorry, buddy. This movie is your problem now.
Put your hands together. Come on, clap to this.
Gotta watch
Put
it.
your hands together.
Watch it.
Put your hands together.